The highlighted domains are in your handout, so you don't need to copy this down. But a couple little things if you haven't looked at it. CC is counting and cardinality. That's the emphasis for kindergarten. RP is ratio and proportion. EE is expressions and equations. Those two are the highlighted domains in 6th grade. That doesn't mean you don't teach anything but that's kind of where you get the punch for 6th grade. In the high school, because we're not doing this just, across all of high school, but there are particular highlighted domains, and the ones that we're doing for the prototyping work are at functions. So we're working with interpreting functions and building functions. Now, we'll get to this more later, but the other two domains in functions actually are specific functions, so when you're doing these two things, you're also including them. But those are the highlighted domains. And that's where you're going to want to look at growth over the years. That's what's going to be growth over the years in those areas. So you're going to be able to tell a lot about what happens to kids as they go through the progressions for these in particular. Doesn't mean other things aren't going to be counted, but the emphasis is on these. And the assessment is going to emphasize these. I am not privy to, nor will I be part of, the assessment design. So that's a thing that you're going to have to, stay tuned for. I can tell you a little bit about it. I want to give you an overview of the evidence-centered design work. The conceptual framework for that work, and I guess I've debated whether to say this or not, because you're already scared enough, but I'll scare you a little more. When you begin in a project like this, and evidence-centered design has been at the forefront of everything Park and Smarter Balance has done. It was required by the federal government for the grants, so it had what was done for assessment had to be based on evidence. This hasn't ever really been done before. The work was developed through work that City College of New York did with the Educational Testing Service, began in 1997. Because ETS does SATs and some other things, the kind of work it did isn't at all like the kind of work you do when you have a set of of Common Core standards on which to build. So we are in the process of figuring this out. There's part of me that says it would have been real nice to know this ahead of time, but we don't. And so what I can assure you is that as we are doing this work, we are staying very close to the Common Core state standards and even the language in the state standards. You're not going to be surprised by what comes out in this. You're going to recognize it if you know the state standards, fortunately. But there are three in their framework. They have 3 models, and we're working on all 3 models currently at the Dana Center. There's a student model, there's an evidence model, and there's a task model. So we're going to go through each of these. The student model is a claim or a set of claims about what constitutes student proficiency in math. In other words, if you're doing a claim, and we'll talk about different levels in a minute, but if you're doing a claim, you're making a statement about what a student understands, what a student can do, what a student looks like. What does the kid look like that knows this stuff? Never mind, don't put aside for a minute. Okay, here's what they're supposed to know. What do they look like? If you have them in your class, you'll know it when you see it. Okay, we'll describe it. That's what the claim is. What does the student look like that knows this, that is proficient in that particular area of mathematics? The evidence model is, what kinds of things could the student do that would provide evidence that they were proficient? What could they, not the task, and this gets a little subtle because my brain always goes to, okay, what's the task I want them to do? It's a level above that. What are the characteristics, and that's sort of a phrase that helps me. Student work is characterized by. That's in one of your handouts. You don't have to write it down. We'll come to that in just a couple minutes. Student work is characterized by what kinds of characteristics? What do students do that convinces you, that is evidence for you, that they are who you just claimed they were, or you want them to be? And finally, there's the task model. What are the tasks, the kind of tasks that might elicit that level of evidence? I think this is where we have fallen down. Now, nobody was using this model before, I've already said. Nobody's really done this. But if you look at the evidence that we have kind of come to accept through our assessments, and I'm sure this is not true of the state test of Illinois, which I haven't looked at in probably 10 years, but sometimes when you have a constructed response question and the rubric is worth 2 points, and the kid, if they put down anything that even shows they read the problem and knows that there's a unit in it, they get 1 point. That's really not what we're talking about here. What are the tasks, and what's the rubric, and what's the grading system? How are we going to do this so that we know when the student does this, we're going to believe that's really evidence of their understanding? Now, I'm going to just pause for a moment. Can we do that? I don't know. I sure hope so, or I wouldn't be doing this. I look around the room, and, you know, there are a whole bunch of us who have flunked retirement in this room. At least at the moment, we're not doing real well with it. I wouldn't be working. I'd be back playing with my 5-year-old grandsons if I didn't believe this could be done, if I didn't think it was worthwhile trying. And that's what